Hello and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey,
I am Dan.
and today I am absolutely elated to talk about some of the most exciting Star Wars news that we have heard in a very, very long time. And that is this article from The Hollywood Reporter that came out that stated that Rey, my personal favorite Star Wars character, is going to play a very large role in the future of Star Wars on the big screen. What do you think, Dan? Just first impressions on when you heard this news, and we'll talk a little bit more about the details and some of the nuances moving forward.
I'm happy. I'm happy they're choosing, they finally confirmed a direction.
Hmm.
And for one way or the other, whether you like Rey, you like the character of Rey, which I know you very much so like the character of Rey,
Absolutely.
as she is your favorite character, or she wasn't your favorite, there's a new direction. There's a defined direction. And like it or not, this is where we're going.
A-
So it's exciting to see at least that we have a direction and all the different possibilities that can come from that.
Absolutely. And the possibilities are really what I think is the most exciting part about this news. But before we really get into what could come of this, what we hope to see from it, I do want to talk about this article just a little bit. It's from the author. I guess first I should say it was published in the Hollywood Reporter, and the author is Boris Kitt, and it's titled Star Wars Movies Race for Rey and the Future of the Franchise on the Big Screen. And this article first points out news that we haven't covered on Blue Shadow yet, but we can kind of talk about that for a sec. It's that Simon Kinberg, particularly noted for writing a lot of X-Men movies and some of the writing on Star Wars Rebels, is producing a new Star Wars trilogy. I found that news very exciting. Dan and I, like I said, have talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of ask you, Dan, there's been a lot of discussion whether this would be episode 10, 11, 12, or just a series of three movies that tell a unified story. What do you think about Simon Kinberg? I am a massive X-Men fan, so I was excited to hear that and Star Wars Rebels. And, what are your thoughts on Simon Kinberg and what are your thoughts on the trilogy upcoming?
Well, first of all, if it's anything like Rebels, we know it's going to be good Star Wars,
True.
first and foremost. Second of all, I'm excited. It's new, and this might be a cop-out answer. I really don't care where the trilogy is, whether it be 10, 11, 12, a completely independent trilogy. It doesn't matter to me. It's new Star Wars. I'm excited.
I love
But
that perspective.
yeah.
I personally, and I love the sequel trilogy. I love all nine of the core, trilogy-based Star Wars movies. And I love the idea of making a new trilogy that isn't necessarily 10, 11, 12, the Skywalker saga movies. I think they concluded the Skywalker saga for better or worse, whether you liked it or not again. But I think respecting that decision and maintaining the integrity of leaving the Skywalker, story from the perspective of really Luke, Leia, the Skywalkers versus Palpatine, and letting Rey be like the beacon of light coming out of that to push forward, I think is a very, very smart decision.
Hmm.
While not necessarily like making it Palpatine's back again. And that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that story is wrapped up.
Right. And then a new trilogy means a new villain, which is great
Hmm.
because I will say, for as many perceived faults of the sequel trilogy, one common bright spot was the introduction of Kylo Ren.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing character. So we'll get a new villain, which will be good too.
Hopefully lightsaber wielding, especially if we're going to see new Jedi Order and stuff. And this is where I kind of want to. So we talked about new Skywalker saga versus not. I want to talk about one more thing before we dive into like the interconnectivity of the Rey movie and what the story might actually be. But I want to kind of mention something that I've seen a lot going around on Twitter. We need to join Blue Sky. I heard it's far more positive. There's a lot of anger on Twitter X, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. Twitter's always been a pretty down place,
It's a hate
but
storm.
there is the occasional gem on Twitter, so
It
always
is
got to stay
true.
on Twitter.
Maybe we'll add Blue Sky, not take Twitter away. But I've seen a lot of, think pieces about how Star Wars is a nostalgia driven franchise and they don't really know what to do. And I think that is a whole load of hogwash. But I mean, given that how wonderful the Acolyte was, if you like, we loved it here. but there's clearly new ways to take it. But I think Rey is a great example. Again, like you said earlier, Dan, whether you like Rey or not, she is that link. She is a bridge between the old and the new. And I think she really is uniquely positioned where there aren't many other characters that can drive this story forward, which is why she is. I think this article kind of even says like she's pretty much the only chip on the table to do this.
Hmm.
And I think we can talk about the Finn factor later, but what do you think about, you know, Rey as bringing back a returning character while also pushing the story forward?
I think, like you said, the article did a very good job of saying she's kind of all that's left, and it's good. I like that. I like Rey as the returning character. And they Rey's new Jedi Order. It's a whole bunch of different ways we can go. We'll probably get some other returning characters, possibly Finn, Poe, maybe. Definitely BB-8, I'm assuming.
I would love that.
But
And I really, sorry, go ahead. I got too
no, I was
excited.
gonna, no, go right ahead. It's good that we have the link for better or worse. We have the way we're going, and there are so many ways that so many different directions that we can go from here. We might be seeing Force Ghosts if they
Mhm.
want to link back a little bit more to the Skywalker saga, a Luke Force Ghost coming in here and there.
And I see no reason why that this movie could be these movies slash that this movie, whatever the story could be, can be separate from the Skywalker saga and still have these interconnectivity.
Hmm.
There's no reason it can't be that. I think people often get so worked up about like keeping everything so in a bucket where it's not necessarily like that. It doesn't have to be like a continuation of the Skywalker saga to include Rey, Finn, potentially Luke, all of this.
And it kind of will be a continuation of the Skywalker saga, though. It's the Skywalker saga is directly influencing the events that are going to happen in this trilogy.
Mhm.
How much of an influence they have, we don't know. But it's definitely going to play some sort of role.
I mean,
And
I
I don't think the new trilogy will do anything to harm the Skywalker saga. I guess that's what
absolutely.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think they left it in such a position where that's the case. They can't really like it's kind of a closed book.
Hmm.
They can't go back and change that. And I think again, like it or not, you can kind of think about it as the like the the what is what are they calling like the Avenger like Iron Man through Avengers Endgame, the Infinity Saga. Kind of like
Yeah.
Infinity Saga, Multiverse Saga. Again, feelings on current MCU offerings aside, I think it'll be kind of like that, where it's important what happened before, but it's a new story. And I think this
Hmm.
strikes a balance with a lot of the things that the people had problems with for the Acolyte. Again, beyond those silly problems that you couldn't have fixed regardless of what happened in the show. But I think if people didn't truly like that era, I think you do have Rey, a familiar character. You have this connection to something that you love. And I think that really can drive forward. And another thing I wanted to talk about is my I was talking to my wife about this and she was like, I'm surprised that they're, making this decision given how generally like timid they seem with, things like canceling the acolyte, kind of seeming to cave to fan or, the loudest complainers in the fandom's demands. And
Hmm.
I said, like, I really think like while those may be the loudest voices, the people who, and this is gonna make you want to throw up here, the kids who were watching The Force Awakens when it came out, that is a year from now, that'll be 10 years ago. So
Oof.
those kids that were maybe, you know, 10 when The Force Awakens came out are going to be 20 next year. And then by the time these movies come out, they'll be in their 25, like they could potentially even have kids of their own. And I
Hmm.
think while it has taken them a really long time and it has been a little frustrating to not have Star Wars on the big screen for 5 years and even more up through The Mandalorian and Grogu next year, I think that this is going to feel like the big return to Star Wars, even though we have Mandalorian, we have this Rey movie, and we're going to talk about that connection next.
Hmm.
But I think this is going to be like it's here, like kind of hopefully like the buzz that the Force Awakens had coming back.
Yeah. And I think Disney's going to do a very good job of promoting this. Uh, especially a new trilogy. I mean, we discussed before about the hype behind The Force Awakens at the time,
That was a
and I think
special.
it was, and I think it's the Disney themselves will try and get it back to that amount of hype.
And I think they really can, especially on the story. And that's kind of where I do want to dive into. We know we have this new Jedi Order movie that they confirmed at Star Wars Celebration 2023. That's directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. We've heard a lot of writers coming and going. It was delayed because of the strike. It was supposed to be the first one out of the gate, but it's not now. I kind of want to talk about that movie and why I think that that movie is kind of and what I hope is a bridge between the original trilogy. Much like I told you, Rey, the character, or I think Rey, the character, is going to be the bridge between the new and the old. I think this movie will allow Rey to kind of flex her muscles a little bit, show the growth. It's supposed to be set 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker. Like we're going to see Jedi Master Rey at her height in this
I mean,
movie.
it's gonna be no different than the time jump between Empire and Return of the Jedi. With the Lukes, we're gonna be, for example, the Luke we got at the end of Empire and the Luke we got in Return of the Jedi.
Hmm.
We can expect to see a similar jump, I
And
think.
I think that is like, the Mary Sue argument that I hate so much about Rey. That she has no training, blah blah blah. I think had they given more space than a year between the Rise of Skywalker and the Last Jedi, a year timeline wise, not year, like real
Hmm.
life wise. I think that they could have alleviated some of that with more training information, or like she trained, blah blah blah. But
Hmm.
I think that this large time jump is really going to allow us to see something that we didn't get to see with Anakin because he turned to the dark side, Luke because George Lucas chose to make the prequels. We're going to get to see like Jedi Master Rey really perform, which I'm really, really excited about. And I think it, like I said, the what this article kind of and some other information is kind of saying Rey is going to be like the Obi positioned as the Obi-Wan of the next trilogy, which
Hmm.
I love that. And it's like I hope that she doesn't die or anything. I think there's a lot of life left in that character. But I think
I mean, there's
like
3 movies left in that character.
I'd argue more, but I have a problem with character death, especially my favorites. But she I really think that she like this movie will kind of set us up to have her in that Obi-Wan role.
Hmm.
Where like I feel like she was kind of, felt very early on, obviously, in her Jedi progression in the sequel trilogy, where she's kind of like figuring it out. I think having this opportunity to see like a confident Rey with her new Jedi Order is going to be something special that'll then allow this movie to really come out swinging.
It will.
The
And I have a
trilogy,
question.
allow the trilogy to
Yeah,
come out swinging. Sorry.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think we will see Grogu in Rey's trilogy?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question.
Because
My
we know
heart,
he should be alive during it,
he,
barring any dramatic events.
I cannot imagine that they would kill Grogu.
I didn't want to say the words, but I'm glad you picked up on it.
But I do think that let me start with I don't really want him there, mainly because
No?
he chose to be a Mandalorian. And
Hmm.
and maybe if there's some sort of interplay between the Mandalorians and the Jedi or something, then of course. But I really think that this story should be about Rey and new characters. And really, like, I think something that what could make this trilogy be really successful, and maybe it does stem from that new Jedi Order movie, is like if they really look at what worked, what people like about their favorite Star Wars characters, and do a little more of that. Like, obviously, trudge forward. Like, we got some like amazing new characters in the Acolyte that are unlike anything we've seen before. But I think for something like this, where we're trying to pull people back, don't do nostalgia in the sense of we have, that like Ponda Baba show up again, but
Hmm.
do it in the sense that, I mean, he obviously wouldn't be there in this, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Uh, have this be where it's like maybe we have like a Han Solo kind of swagger type character, but it's a Jedi and it's got this like Luke Han fusion or something like that. Like
Right.
bring the ideas and the feelings back
Hmm.
rather than relying on something like Grogu. I'm sorry, I got a little derailed from your initial question.
No, it's okay. We like that.
I really just kind of monologue there. Tell me about your thoughts on Grogu potentially being in this.
Uh, I think if they do it, it'll be because he has that appeal to get people to watch.
It's true.
Um, like you said, though, he did choose to be a Mandalorian, but we don't know how that's really gonna go.
That is true.
For example, no, I'm not gonna say that. Like, don't want to get too grim.
Ah, you usually do.
I was what if Din Djarin does not make it out of the movies?
I think it would be more fitting for him to continue on and carry the torch as a Mandalorian personally.
Fair enough.
That's my personal thought.
No, that's a fair thought.
I have one question for you, and then we can wrap up our discussion on this matter. We brought him up a little bit on the note of bringing familiar character back. I really think it is, I don't want to say essential, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say essential to bring Finn back.
I think so.
And I would
I
love that. I think that has been a lot of people's, a large complaint about the sequels. And bringing Finn back would address that and allow these characters and actors who had great chemistry to build on that relationship from the sequels.
right, and especially because in Return of what is it? Rise of Skywalker. My goodness, I forgot that. I confuse the names. They all use in Rise of Skywalker, it was hinted at that Finn is force sensitive. And in that 15-year period, we could see Finn and Rey grow together as a Jedi duo, almost like I don't want to say master and apprentice because we don't know where Rey's at this time in her training, but more of like them learning to grow as Jedi together.
At this point, you would
It's
almost
like a
think of them as like peers 15 years down
Yeah, I
the
was gonna say
line.
like a brother-sister relationship almost
Yes.
instead of a master and apprentice.
And I think that kind of like we can hold the discussion on what we'd like to see from a new Jedi Order, but I think that could kind of the connectivity and not shutting off like connection to those around you, I think could be a way to improve the Jedi Order as we know it. And
Hmm.
Finn would be a great avenue for that.
He would be.
Anything else to add on this exciting news?
No, I mean, any news will be good news.
It's true.
But
And go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
we can work ourselves into a frenzy about using speculation. So I think just our initial thoughts on it are good, and can and will revisit this topic once we get more news about it. Because if Star Wars does anything, they definitely hang a carrot in front of us and tell us to follow the trail.
Absolutely. And while I know that this, there's been a lot of movies happening, movies not happening, movies happening, movies not happening. Not all of it is official, so I don't tend to view all this stuff as like doom and gloom, but I really, really, really hope that they've, like you said, Dan, they set the direction. This is it. Let's just go and stop him hawing.
Hmm.
So that's kind of my final take. As a Ray fan, I am truly, truly excited, and I think this is the right decision to use her rather than let her sit there. And I
Hmm.
think it really will build on people's goodwill towards the character. Again, however they feel about the sequels, I think that this will help people grow attached to her, maybe at least a fraction of the way that I have.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Please consider giving us a like or a review or subscription on YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. Consider giving us a follow on Twitter or X at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. We thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.